Hey everybody, welcome to the InPsight Show. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. Welcome to the podcast, you guys. Hey, look, I have the most exciting guest. I have been such great friends with this magnificent human for quite a while now. And before I introduce him in person, let me tell you all about him, you guys. He's one of my dear pals from way back, plus he's really cool, okay? Andrew Brewer is my guest today. He is the rock and roll psychic. He is an internationally televised clairvoyant, once voted the 5th best psychic reader in the world, and you're going to find out why on this show. And he's been listed in over 40 books, magazines, and online polls as one of the top 50 psychics in the world, okay? One of the top 40 most trusted psychics in the world, one of the top 100 light workers in the world, guys, and one of the top 30 psychics in the United States. Now, Andrew is a former corporate executive, once upon a time an actor in Hollywood. I swear we all did that turn for a while, and was the featured psychic on Sabrina's Psychic Answer from 1992 to 1994. He is also, guys, as if that was not enough awesomeness, okay? He is also a 7-time Amazon category bestseller with 3 of his books, 3 of them, being chosen as the #1 hot release, guys. So welcome to the show, this fine gentleman, my dear friend, Andrew Brewer. Hi, Andrew.
Danielle, hi. It's always fun to hang with you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you. I've been a fan. We've been friends since Los Angeles, even when I was in Northern California, and it's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. It is awesome to have you too. And gang, I am so excited to have Andrew on, because if you follow him on any of the socials, Facebook, any of them, you'll know that Andrew does not put a limit on what he talks about. You don't, Andy. You just get out there and you get rolling. And that's one of the things over all of these years that I have so deeply appreciated about you, is that you do not get on there and worry about what everybody else is going to say. And I'm just going to, you don't. I'm going to lead out with this. I got to know, okay? So you, over the years, have done so many financial predictions. And gang, before I ask him this question, you need to know out there in podcast land, okay, that's a tough one for psychics. Psychics lean away from that. They're like, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to say anything about this. So Andrew, can I just ask you, how has that gone since 2011? That I can remember back, as far back as these predictions were coming out? You were saying stuff about the economy that was people just didn't want to hear. How's that gone for you, my friend?
Well, it actually goes back prior to 2008. I predicted the 2008, correction as well. When that didn't go over so well either.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So the answer is, it's not always very popular at the time, but it gives me street cred, later on. I think the problem for most people is that they get caught up in a certain kind of hype in the way in which they see things. And I've just tried to say, if this were someplace else, if this was Argentina, not to disparage Argentina, or if this was Ecuador or someplace, right, would the same conditions lead to a certain kind of outcome? And I just extract out the exceptionalism part of the United States and go, this is what I think is going to happen. And so, for the most part, I seem to have an extra gear for economics. I'm not great at everything, but I do seem historically to be pretty good with the economy.
I love your humility. I love that you're like, hey, I'm not great at everything. I've yet to find something you're really sucky at, so that's awesome.
Thank you.
And I've known you a long time, my friend. You're welcome. I mean, when we're talking about the economy, we're talking about people's money, we're talking about their expectations, and I happen to know, just from knowing you all these years, that you've had quite a number of high-profile business folks who are your clients. I mean, how does discussing the economy go when you've got big money clients that you're dealing with?
Well, I have fewer big money clients now than I did prior to Trump and prior to some of the things I said when Trump was a candidate and subsequently to him become president. So I ran off a lot of my kind of richer clients at some point. But I mean, I think the important piece of this for any of us is just trying to find a sense of balance. And so,
yeah.
Lots of times, and you and I have had to deal with this, with other people saying very apocalyptic kinds of things. And I say things that are kind of inconvenient, but not the end of the world. And so I think it's important to create a condition within yourself that you can say, these things I expect to happen, and if they do happen, hopefully that gives you the street cred to say, okay, but it's not going to be quite as dire as worst case scenario might suggest. So that's actually been pretty positive. So from a happy space, you know, if you say things might be problematic, and they are problematic, and then everybody else finally catches up to that and says, okay, the sky's falling, it's the end of the world, and you go, well, hey, not so fast, the cycle is working through, and it's going to get a lot better. And I actually think things will be better, but I think short term, they get a little more complex, for sure.
Yeah, you know, and I've been seeing that same thing. You know, I've been looking at that exact same thing, and it's hard because you're a person who, I mean, you have no desire to get out there and showboat. That is so not who you are at all. At all. You're like, nah, that's not my thing. I'm not going to get out there and be like, well, look at me. I'm Andrew Brewer. Look at all the things I've done. So you don't shout out about a lot of the predictions that you've nailed over the years. And I get to say that because I'm your friend who has known you a long time, and I have observed what you've talked about. And it's not that I'm being some sycophantic weirdo. It's just true. And I think that people deserve, especially in this field, to have credit where credit is due. Because in this field, what we run into is a lot of folks who are claiming to be 100% accurate, and I have 100% accuracy, and look at me, I've never had anything wrong. And it's nice to find an incredibly accurate psychic like yourself who is not worried about saying, oh, I'm 100% accurate. I mean, I know you have some pretty pointed feelings about the 100% accuracy psychic marketing. Could you share those feelings with us, Andrew?
My favorite story ever, because I've always said there's no psychic on earth who's 98% accurate. There's no psychic on earth who's 88% accurate. We do the best we can. And I also say a lot of what I do is intellectual. The reason I'm good with the economy, and I'm good with the economy in the United States and Europe, is because I have kind of a background in economics and history for the United States and Europe, which means I'm not as great at other things necessarily. So I posted this thing on Facebook like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And I said, there's no psychic ever who's 98% accurate. And this woman posted on Facebook, well, I understand that. If it were just me, if I was the one doing it, I can understand I can make a mistake. But I connect directly with spirit, and spirit's 100% accurate, so therefore I'm 100% accurate. So I think it's important. This is my own editorial. And I will say this, to give credit where credit's due, you are my favorite psychic. I have said this publicly many times. To me, you are the best psychic in the world. You are the best psychic in the world. I've admired you for a long time. I've admired the way you approach things. I've admired your energy. I've admired everything about you. And I think that it's also good that we can recognize and share with each other. I mean, there was a time when I was much more like the socialite, fun psychic, and that was pre-QAnon and pre-Trump. And that QAnon changed my world, in that I went against QAnon early on, and I went against Trump early on. I said a lot of these things would not go the way that sort of push, the MAGA push. I try to push back against that. But prior to that, I was like the fun psychic, right? I think it's really critical that we try to put things into some sort of balance. I don't know everything. I do the best I can. I say crazy things I don't mean to. I try the best I can. But I'm also not afraid to say what I think. And it takes a lot of, and you're one of the few other psychics who really puts things out there. And you know the price tag emotionally comes with that. especially if you predict it way in advance, right? Like I predicted a rise in neo-Nazism way back, when that was impossible. So in the time between when you predict it and it shows up, that's kind of a complex time, right? Ultimately, I think it's important.
That's true.
Complex. I think it's important to try to put things into balance. I think it's important that we understand that we're here to try to help people. We're here to try to help them understand themselves better, try to help them find their happy space. But I don't know everything, and I don't pretend to. And I also think it's important too, and one of the other reasons that I admire you is you do the same thing. I will admit that I predicted something, hey, I said this was going to happen, and it didn't, which is probably not the norm either. I think it's important to try to let people know, just because I said this, and this, and this, and this, doesn't mean the next thing out of my mouth is not, way out in left field. So balance is good. Balance is good. I think humility is good. I'm 71 now. There was a time I was a lot cockier. When I was young and, on TV and stuff, I was a little bit different kind of personality. But I mean, we're all doing the best that we can. Being psychic is just one thing. It ain't all that, right? I ain't all that.
Yeah.
So, I hope that makes sense the way I'm saying it, but that's the way I see it.
Well, no, it makes total sense the way that you're seeing it. And I'm giggling over here. I'm trying to shut up and not laugh over the top of you because it's cracking me up. You're talking, not about how hard it is, but you're talking about the QAnon phenomenon. QAnon
yes, I call
phenomenon.
Them QAnon.
Where am I going with this? What do you call them?
I call them QAnon and the Qrotics. And they had Qrosis, and I just made a bunch of puns with the Q. There was a group. I used to get a lot of death threats. Danielle, I used to get a lot of death threats
Andrew.
from people who were
cool.
very, right wing. And and I think they expected me.
Wow.
There was a time when I used to be introduced on podcasts as the most controversial psychic in the world. And I thought, dude, if I'm the most controversial thing you've ever seen, then you don't get out of the house much. But because of that, I think a lot of people in Qville thought that I would kind of go along with them, and I didn't. Early on, I said, this doesn't make sense. What you're saying, you can't go from this to this to that. It doesn't make any sense, And because of that, there was a time when I was more prominent. I went and did things. I kind of retired to some degree, kind of laid low from 2017, 2018 on until just recently. And I came back more after the debate with President Biden, with former President Biden, excuse me. When I saw that, I go, it's game on, baby. I have to come back and I have to talk again. So anyway, here I am.
You know what I think is so interesting about that is, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. I find the QAnon phenomenon, it's interesting. I'm thinking back. Back when I predicted that Hillary Clinton in 2016 and that whole election was going to win, and then she didn't win, it was fascinating because I received death threats all over the place. Now, I have a theory, and I'm going to throw my theory out, and I'd be interested to see what you think about this theory. So this is the first time that in 2016, that's when we had a ton of Russian bots out there. We had a ton of Russian operatives that were just hitting the threads. They were supporting Trump. It was crazy. And never before in my life, even in my most wild rock star days back in the day, and I said a lot of stuff that was mighty spicy back in the day, never did I get somebody offering to kill me dead. Until I came out and said, Trump's not going to win this. There's no way. The popular vote goes to Hillary. Hillary becomes the president. Boy, did I learn a thing or two about reading the energies of that. Just because you win doesn't mean you get to become the president. So and that was a fascinating time in my life. However, One of the things that was so fascinating was the amount of hatred that hit that
For
YouTube
sure.
video. And the YouTube video, for some reason, it went crazy viral. There were like almost 1 million views on it, and I didn't even understand why. It was 9 minutes long. I was sitting in my back room. I had my glasses on, my robe on, drinking my coffee, talking about why it was the time frame of the yin or the feminine, and here comes Hillary, right? So when we're talking about you getting death threats, when we're talking about QAnon, and you got them from these Q people, one of the things I used to just crack up about, and I used to do podcasts about this in 17, 18, 19, 20, was that originally I saw QAnon was authored. That this is what I saw psychically, and maybe you saw something different, but originally it was planted and authored by Russian operatives, and it was just this weird, crazy thing that these people threw out there, and I kept getting these big, big visions of just Russians sitting around eating pizza in some airplane hangar somewhere, cracking up, drinking vodka, going, what a bunch of freaking idiots, and just making this stupid stuff up, and then, of course, everybody diving onto it, and then that was its goal, was to take on its own life. But I think it's really interesting that the only 2 times you got, well, maybe you've gotten death threats previous to this. I'm to understand your comment that with the Qs came out, gave you these death threats. When I came out, again, there was a bunch of Russian bots in 2016. I got a bunch of death threats to the point where I discontinued the comment thread on my YouTube thread. And people thought I was doing that because I missed the prediction. I'm like, no, because then people started to fight and people started to defend me, and the bot is arguing with other people saying they're going to come kill them. So what is your opinion? Not to say that now there aren't a bunch of crazy Q MAGA people running around. There's crazy people everywhere.
There's crazy people.
What do you feel Q initially? Oh God, absolutely, across the world. I guess my question for you, if you're comfortable well, I don't even need to say that.
Anything.
I guess the question.
There's nothing. There's nothing off limits with me.
What do you think? That's another thing I love about talking with you. What do you think QAnon was? Do you think the Russians started it initially, or you think it was just some hayseed sitting around who's just, went down a rabbit hole?
So, I'm going to go down a dark path here for a second. I believe...
Oh, go, Andrew!
And I said this in 2010, 11, that there was basically a covert military operation against the United States from Russia, most likely, that was being done internally. And I expected there to be problems. I think that QAnon, there used to be this thing called RT-TV, and a lot of the ideas about economics, I mean, I said some of the things that the Q people said, but their mode of getting from point A to point B to someplace way over there, I've said for a long time, which also did not make me super popular, that Love and Light Land has sold us out. I've said that a bazillion times. And I said that they were co-opted by the far right. And I think that QAnon, I actually think that they got crazier and crazier and crazier because they wanted to see just how crazy they could be to see how many people would go along with them.
Right?
That's my opinion. I think, wow, it's like, oh, let's say this. Let's tell them this. Let's tell them that there's monkeys that came down from Jupiter through the Pleiades. I mean, I think it's like that they just make insane things to see, oh, yeah, man, can you believe that they do these? So then I think it escalates from there. To me, it is a military operation against the United States. I realize this is just going to bring the death threats back to Andy, but that's how I see it. So I hope this is answering your question. I think that QAnon was designed there's a German word and I can't pronounce it. It's like Weltanschauung or something like that. It's basically worldview warfare.
Schadenfreude? Is it Schadenfreude?
No, it starts with
that's when you're happy that somebody else had something bad happen.
It's Weltan something. Anyway, the basic concept goes like this, that you try to do things to, in essence, poison people with our critical thinking skills. I mean, the corruption of the United States educational system, I think, is by design. And there's a lot of things that I think are by design. Again, that's an opinion. My economic predictions, if they happen, they happen, then we say I knew what I was talking about. These are more, this is an opinion, it's hard to quantify and say, right? But I do think that QAnon was designed as a means to try to get people to associate one thing. It's like a bait and switch. It's a cognitive reframing. And that's the way I look at it. And I think you have to look at who stands to benefit from that. I mean, we can get very political with this, you know, whether this is the wealthiest class, the oligarchs, if this is a foreign power, to try to make the United States, you know, like they are right now, kind of a international pariah to some degree, you know, so it's complex.
You know, one of the things, it is complex, and I would say about what you are going through with the death threats and how crazy it all got and all these things, I would agree with you 100%, because I very specifically saw, and I say Russian operatives, that could be Russian military, that I don't think it was just a random bunch of Russian people hanging out, eating pizza, drinking vodka, but that, and I'm not trying to be, you know, disparaging of the Russian culture. I literally, in my head, saw what looked like a warehouse or an airplane hangar or something, and it had windows way up tall, and it was just this room with a bunch of, you know, those cheap card table, long, like 8-foot tables that were put into L's, a bunch of just crappy chairs hanging around, pizza boxes. This is what I was seeing. Like, I literally was psychically looking at this, you know, all this vodka bottles, vodka shots, people are eating pizza, laughing about what dumbasses Americans are, making all this, like you said, you know, Elvis is coming back, and Elvis was secretly JFK, who was secretly a clone of Hillary Clinton, who was secretly alive in 1860. I mean, like the stupidest stuff, and people, and God bless the people, because, and I say that because, you know, there's a lot of people who are super negative about anybody who would get sucked into conspiracy theories or fear or whatever. And I always say, gosh, it's really awful to get furious at people for being lied to and for believing a lie. Now, if someone has irrefutable proof and they absolutely don't want that proof because they are absolutely, they just are convinced it's a lie, then where does that fall? Right? So I look at these Q folks, I mean, the hardcores, like especially back in the day when all this was hatching out. And I very much believe that it was Russian sponsored. I used to talk about this and say, guys, if you're a QAnon person and you're this big patriotic American, you're falling into a Russian disinformation campaign. And then, of course, human beings in America, what do we do in America, Andrew? We decide, oh, I can make a bunch of money doing this, right? So then all these folks jumped on the bandwagon and got crazier than the Q crazy. And I think those Russian operatives just had a hell of a time. I think they sat there ordering pizzas, drinking more vodka, making more fun of everything. I could see them doing it. So, you know, and the psyops, I believe you're talking about a psychological operation against the United States. And if anybody doesn't know what a psyop is, that is when you design a mind scramble. And the United States used psyops on many other countries. The CIA was brilliant with authorship with this, and I just think we got that handed right back to us and then some. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and I think that the people you're seeing are the same people that kept trying to tell me that I'd inherited all this money from my Nigerian, you know, grandfather. So, you know, that's just, you know what I mean? It's the same basic logic. There was a thing with JFK Jr., right? That JFK Jr. faked his death.
Yeah.
So they had this dude that they thought was JFK Jr. Looks nothing like JFK Jr. When I was young, lots of times people said I looked like JFK Jr. This has been a few days. So I did, you know, I do these overlays. So I did these overlays that showed that I was in fact JFK Jr. and I did this whole thing just to kind of mess with their heads. I think it's important. This is my editorial. I think it's important that we find a happy balance. And I think it's important that we try not to become zealots that we know all. So I'm going to go a real quick recap of my presidential predictions. I predicted Trump was going to win in 2016, and I did not want to do it. But I also
You did.
And I said that reluctantly. However, I said in 2024 that there is no way in the world that Trump can win in 2024. So I also said in 2012, and this is going to be a fun story about psychics, I said that Romney would win. And you know why I said that Romney would win? Because I had visions of Romney in Washington giving speeches and doing things. Mm-hmm. So to me, the only way in which I saw him plain as day. The only way in which that could happen would be that Romney was president. Romney did not win the presidency, but he later became a senator from Utah. So the things that I saw, this is why psychics, it's important to try to look at them, put in some kind of context. The image I had was correct.
Yeah.
Right? But the story that I attached to it was incorrect. So I thought, Romney wins in 2012. I picked Trump. I picked Biden in 2020. I said that Trump would try to contest it. I said it would not be decided the first day. It would take a while. I said that the certification would be a day late. I didn't know why that was. And I said that Trump would be gone before the inauguration. So I'm feeling good, right? I'm feeling good about 2024. And I was adamant that to me, there's no way, because the reason that I felt so confident, incorrectly, of course, the reason I felt so confident that Trump was going to win was because to me, he doesn't match the preponderance of people within the United States. I look at most people in the United States are pleasant, friendly, sane, rational, kind people. I do believe that. And I thought his base doesn't really match that. So that circles the earth a couple of times and comes back to what we were talking about with QAnon, in that I do think that is a concerted effort to change the way in which the United States interacts on the world stage. And I think that's been successful. And I think that 2026, I predicted, another prediction I made real fast. I predicted that the final week of February, from February 23rd to February 28th, 2026, I said this well over a year in advance, would be a gigantic shift in the United States. That something major was going to happen between the 23rd and the 28th of February. That'd be like a big deal, and it would be a problem. And so, they bombed Iran on the 28th. I think it's going to get complex. I mean, to me, Danielle, I think it gets I think the economy, and if this is boring, I'll try to speed it up.
No, it's not. It's not boring at all.
Early on, I said that these tariffs would be crazy, right? It would push out tourism. That would have an impact. It would destroy NATO. I also said that there would be problems in unemployment. That it's going to get better. Yeah. I said it would get worse. There are going to be problems in real estate, kind of like 2008. One of the things I talked about a lot for the last year has been a problem with the private credit market. Well, now that's everywhere. But when I said it 9 months ago, it was considered, crazy, right? So all those things have progressively gotten to a point where there's a real instability to the United States economy. And I think that coupled with what's going on with Iran, I think that leads to significant problems. I do believe the United States comes out of it eventually. I also predicted, and we'll see, that Trump will be pushed out, not because of the Epstein files, which he should be, that's crazy, but he's not because of anything that we would think rationally, but because business people would decide that he's not really, that it would be the business class that would ultimately push him out. And so that's what I expect. I guess we'll find out. So that's what I think.
I got to tell you, Andrew, I have always talked about Trump in this way, that it was not going to be anybody removing him for any illegal things he's done, which obviously, he's been indicted on 34 counts of all kinds of craziness. So it's really hard to make all that stuff up about a person and then involve all these different courts and all these different circuit courts and lawyers. So And there are folks who are just ride or die Trump. I mean, I got the people I like too. I get it. Not necessarily about that person. And one of the things that I'm just going to kind of insert here real quick is that, when I was back in Los Angeles, when we were back in Los Angeles and The Apprentice was on, I was good friends with people who worked on the NBC Apprentice set. They worked on the show and they had to sign these non-disclosure agreements, these NDAs. And these friends of mine, I'd be playing music back in the day, doing whatever in LA, and we'd go out drinking or whatever we were doing, and they would get a cocktail or two in them. And they wouldn't tell me certain things, but they would tell me, oh my God, we have created a monster. This guy is so disorganized. He's an ADHD meltdown nightmare. None of his business is being conducted like this. We had to create a boardroom for him that's a set because his actual place of business looks like a trailer park back room. And I don't mean cool trailer park. I don't mean kitschy, cool John Waters trailer park. We're talking, just things cluttered because there's not enough room in a single wide trailer type of space, when you have got a small space to live in and you're just piling it up. So they said we had to create a set, Andrew, and they said, this is Trump's boardroom. And it wasn't. It was a television set. So my friends would tell me this, and they would tell me that he was inappropriate with the women on set, and he would always try to grab everybody, and he said heinous stuff. And so back then he was a Democrat. Back then, he was a Democrat, supposedly a registered New York Democrat. So I have never been a Donald Trump fan, and it's not because he's a Republican. It's because he's not a Democrat or a Republican. He's just a Trumpian. He's for himself. And it's not about him being a Republican. It's about he just wasn't my cup of tea, Andrew, ever, in anything he did. So we kind of weave this back in with our story here. Now we've got this person and they're this president, and somehow they get in 2024. And that was bizarre. I mean, talk about I was looking at Harris. I was looking at her just walking in there. And then we have all of these bomb threats that are called in from Russia to all these polling places, and they're evacuating polling places out and whatnot. And, I don't want to sound like some of the election deniers either. Some of the election deniers who are like, Trump won, it wasn't Biden. However, Germany and France coming up, here's my prediction that I've been looking at forever, are finally going to figure out how the dickens they noodled with the firmware of counting the actual paper ballots and how that calculation got noodled with, because the same mix of ingredients that they used here, and I say they, meaning folks who are trying to control things. I'm not saying all Republicans. I know a lot of Republicans who are very unhappy. They voted for Trump, and they're very unhappy about the way things have gone. So we're just talking about the group of people who want to control things for financial reasons. We'll call them that, or religious reasons. And it looks like Europe, coming up in about a year or two, is going to figure out the firmware issue, and then we're going to be able to kind of reverse engineer that back. It's not going to matter because we've got the president we have. However, they're not afraid in Europe to go up against people that they fear may be interfering with their elections. Unlike, Russia, everybody just says, yay, it's Putin every time. So I find this fascinating. And like you talk about this big time between when you predict something and it comes to bear, right? And I don't talk a lot about that because it just makes me sound like I'm this sad-ass psychic who's trying to cover my butt for a prediction that didn't pan out. That's not it at all. I'm really looking forward to our European allies figuring out how these elections can be noodled just by a 1 or 2 percentile, which is generally what it is. So I think that's interesting. Well, we have the president we have now. It is Donald Trump. And I find that the way that you've spoken about Trump has been very forthright. You have not condemned people who happen to believe in Donald Trump. You have specifically stayed to Donald Trump and things that you see that he's doing and is going to continue to do that harm the economy. And this year, like you said, I was looking ahead last year saying it's going to be a crap show financially. I couldn't have told you why, but the U.S. dollar is going to tank out. Our economy is going to tank out. Things are going to get crazy expensive by the time time we're in the middle of this year, we're going to be looking at problems with food chain, food. We're going to look at problems with water. We're now in this big heat bubble. Does it get better? Well, yeah, it does get better. But I think working together, as you're talking about, is really important. Because if we just continue to divide while things get difficult in the country, that's not going to set us up for success when we're trying to figure out how to get crops watered and how to get somebody their SpaghettiOs, you know?
You're going to find a prediction I made about 15 months ago pretty entertaining. In the time between the election in November and his inauguration in January, I predicted on air quite a few times that there would be information that came out of Europe, out of the EU, that would, as I said at the time, circle the earth and come back to Trump, that there would be intelligence information that came, and I specified 2 countries, Poland and France. I said this when I used to do radio shows with Kathy Beal and Louise Eddington up until until Trump was inaugurated. And I said it on that show many times that there would be intelligence information relative to Trump and the election that would come from, and it would come about for a couple of reasons. One, because in order for that prediction to have come to pass, there were a couple of preconditions that had to happen. First, we had to have alienated NATO and the EU to the point where they would actually say that. So that was the first thing. In order for my prediction to have a chance, we would have to really destroy NATO. So that's happened. Poland actually has come up with intelligence. So I do think that our predictions independently of one another, again, are echoing each other. So as far as my issues with Trump, my primary issue with Trump is that he is a racist and a misogynist, and he creates division. Diversity is what makes the United States magical. If you take when we lived in California, one of the beauties of living in California is you go somewhere, 10 people speak 7 different languages, and it's fantastic. One of the things I love about it, it's so. Racism, I can't tolerate. Sexism, I can't tolerate. Attacks on women, I definitely cannot tolerate. And so his misogyny, his racism, his also the fact that he's manipulating people who are not really seeing that he's doing this for himself. I mean, I used to always say, you all talk about, rooting out corruption. You got the most corrupt MFer of all time as your boy that hears about corruption. So for me, my issues with Trump were behavioral, and I also think that there is something to the rule of law. Trump is doing things that, as I look at him, are incredibly illegal. He's manipulating things. The insider trading, I talked about, we should check to see if people are making bets prior to him doing things, which I think has been happening. So insider trading, the SEC is not really doing that. I mean, again, we could go down a very dark path here, but I haven't liked Trump for a long time, and I knew about Trump way before he ever ran for president through the modeling industry. So I knew a bunch of people who were models, and that's how I knew about him and the things that he did in New York relative to modeling and modeling agencies. And so I was over him long before he ever got to the stage where he's at now. So I'm not a fan.
What's fascinating about and I'm not a fan either, obviously. And I'm not a fan, again, not because he's a Republican. And for those who are just listening to this audio and not watching the video, I'm doing finger quotes, but because of who he chooses to bring forward, and for the same reason you're talking about. Absolutely. And Andrew, you're one of the very few people, especially male psychics, if I may. I can think of a couple more. However, you're one of the very few that came out not only predicting neo-Nazism, and I remember that was a hot minute ago, and I was just like, God, it's not that I didn't believe you.
That was a long time ago.
I just didn't, right? I just didn't want it to be true. And then you were saying it, and I thought, oh man, no, come on. Because like I said, you're pretty on the pin when it comes to predictions. And so you also predicted that women, there'd be a war on women. And all I could think of was, oh my God. I mean, here is me back in my 20s stomping for LGBTQI rights and thinking, okay, we're making headway. And the thought that we would be actually in a position where our allies would be stepping away, where racism was being embraced, where people don't even see where some of these things that he will say as our leader are inappropriate because maybe that's an environment that other people grew up in. And so they're like, well, what's wrong with that? And I'm thinking, this is the president of the United States, and it's just weirdly wrong, period. And this person's the president. So when you're the president, you're representing everybody, not just everybody who looks like you or likes you or sounds like you or people you like better. You're representing everybody, even the ones that hate your guts. And, Donald Trump, of course, does not have that type. He's never had that type of emotional put togetherness. So one of the things I would ask you is when you were looking back in the day at a war on women and neo-Nazism, how did that come to you? Was it what did you see it in your head? Did you feel it? Like, how much did you have to argue with yourself about that way back then to say, oh God, do I even say something? This is so out there. How did that come about?
So I'm going to answer part of that question, what I had to go through. I didn't have to go through anything. I don't mean to sound obnoxiously cocky, but I believe in myself. And so if I see it, I typically don't edit it. I'm not right all the time, for sure. And again, I say things off the mark, but there's a method to my madness. And I felt that energy was there, and I saw it long ago. The first time I said this was back in the 1980s. I became a professional psychic in the 1980s, God help me, and I was on TV in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
And so I said it then. And the war against women I thought was obvious. To me, I just didn't think it's not, so I'm going to backtrack. I'm kind of getting, this is an emotional thing for me.
Yeah.
It's not really fair. I'm 71, so the good-looking white boys kind of wore off a little bit, but I've gotten a lot of mileage out of that, right? So I understand the benefits that come to me, and I think it's important that we stand up for other people. I could see that there was any religion that says women should submit to men because Jesus likes it was written by a man who is afraid of women. And so it's important that we stand up for women. I used to do a lot of shows 20 years ago where I was gay friendly. How sad is it that you have to have a term gay friendly, right? And So for me, I just could see the handwriting on the wall. I felt that if the neo-Nazi thing came along, it was based on elitism. It was based on racial elitism. And so to me, the racial elitism and the misogyny were, they were soulmates. And so I wanted to do my part. And the other thing with Trump, and I'll say this real quickly, I was willing, like in 2016, I was voted the Man of the Year, the Light Worker of the Year, and I was the 5th best psychic in the world, right? At least, popularity contest. You were the first best, so, which is true. But that all kind of tanked. But I was willing to give up that so I would never have to say I was fooled by Trump. I was willing to torch my career to the ground so I would never have to go back and say, no, I didn't see that what was going on, the racist, misogynistic, corrupt selfishness of it straight from jump. And so I thought it was important for me because I had a certain audience, I had a certain platform, that I used that.
Right.
I ran off a lot of people probably in that. But it was important, I think it's still important that we make an effort to be inclusive, that we make an effort to try to, what's happening to people in the United States is not fair. some poor family from Mexico or the Dominican Republic or whatever, they're not hurting anyone. They're not doing anything. This whole thing with ICE and all is designed to cause people to second guess their resistance. And I'm just here to say, one of the other things too, and you've done this too, and God bless you for this, I appreciate you so much for this, is that in making these predictions that have happened so many times, public predictions, right, which again, you and I are people who will say it in public, where a lot of people probably have more sense than to do that. We just go ahead and say it. that will maybe give us the street cred to say, okay, we can make a difference. We can take action to try to be supportive of women or LGBTQIA plus rights or anything, that we can make a difference that way. And I think that that's more important than being a psychic. And so for me, from a social media influencer position, I was willing, and it definitely was not helpful to my career, for sure. The psychic part of my career took a huge hit, but I don't have to apologize in my golden years now that I hope I'm making sense the way I'm saying it.
Well, you are. You're talking about being on the right side of history for the right reasons as a white male. And I mean, if I may, a very handsome white male. You're talking about the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. And one of the things that I have always deeply appreciated about you, Andrew, besides all these other things, is that you understood that you had a particular privilege, a card, a something that others might not have, that aren't, who are not white, who are not male, and you were like, this is stupid. I shouldn't even have all these things. This is crazy. I mean, we should all have these things, right? And you were that way when I met you, just the first time I interacted with you, and that was in the aughts, the mid 2000s. So moving on that, I really feel like there are men out there, and there's such great men. There are so many. You're part of the great men, Andrew. There are such great men out there standing up going, you're welcome. It's well earned, because I think peer pressure has got to be intense to be the guy who shuts up and just goes along with it, because it's always been that way. But the fact is, we need our gentlemen to be an Andrew Brewer, be an Andy Brewer. Stand up, stand in the gap. If you have sociological privileges other people don't, really stand in the gap. And especially, and tell me if this is right or wrong, Andrew, because I'm not a guy, so maybe I got this all wrong. But I really feel like it's important for men to see other men standing up, being brave, being courageous, using that divine masculine, to just that divine yang of the yin and yang, to be like, you shall not pass. Wham! There goes the staff into the bridge, and the darkness crumbles and cannot get to the town. I mean, it's to have those Gandalf moments. I really feel that men can take a cue off of you, and I'm not trying to put a bunch of weird pressure on you or anything. It's just true. I especially men in their 70s, and I see a lot more, especially Caucasian men in their 70s, stepping up to say, this is stupid. I cannot believe that, come on, guys, the way that we're treating women, the way that we're treating people of color, the way that we're treating immigrants, and men saying, please stop calling them illegal aliens. They're not from Mars, and Martians can be here. So what's the big deal? They're here now. That's a whole other podcast. Yeah. So it's like, so, I mean, what would you say to your fellow guys out there of all ages? And really quickly before you answer, I would love your opinion on what I'm going to draw out here. As a dude, because I'm not a dude, so I don't know. As a dude, what do you think about all of these young men, all of these Zoomers and young millennials from the ages of about 16, maybe to 30, who are coming out, who are going down the misogynistic, brown people suck, the manosphere, guys, because they've been told by men that they look up to that their masculinity is going to be stolen away if they don't act like this 1910 version of a dude. What do you say to these young men who, just for God's sakes, are probably just looking for some sort of guidance into how to grow up in this crazy world? What would you say to them?
I've said a lot to them. Let's just say that. I'm going to kind of recap. Also, I'm 71 now, so I'm no longer quite the badass boxer that from my 40s and 50s. But I used to, even up until I even got in a fight a year ago. I will go up to people if I see them with Trump flags, or if like when the thing with Trayvon Martin, I lived in Nashville, and I would go up to people and they'd be talking about it, and I said, "That's not how it rolls, boys. That's not how it rolls." So I think you have to be willing to stand up. Secondly, I've written a lot, basically, to incels, and I go, dude, there's a reason you're involuntarily celibate. If you treated women halfway decently, your life would be better. So I've tried to be in the, as a jock, corporate executive, actor, model, all that stuff from a million years ago. I've tried to say there's a different way to do it. You don't have to be in this mindset. All that's, again, it's like Q. They're trying to create a specific way for men to see the world so that they can use them. They're being used. They're being played. And I also think, and this is probably not going to go over well, but a lot of stuff in Love and Light Land that people look at as trying to free you up, in my opinion, is making you enslaved. And I think that I wrote a book, Suck My Root Chakra, and, New Age Rehab, and all these books, right? That I went against what later became called toxic positivity, but at the time, it was whatever crazy thing was in my head. It's important to, as, again, a white boy, to speak up against this. It's important for me, in my opinion, to say, this is not how we play. This is not fair. It's not fair to women. It's not fair to anybody. And if you really have strength within yourself, if you're really confident, you don't need to beat people up. You don't need to look down on people. If you got your act together, son, you don't need to do this. If you really truly believe in yourself, you don't need to stand on somebody's head to make yourself 6 inches taller. All the stuff against women is because men fear women. All the stuff against other races is because white people fear other races. That racially superior, that's crazy. That's crazy. So for me, I have made it a point. I don't want to say this. I've made it a point that I would stand up and not be afraid. I mean, again, I'm 71 years old, so I'm not quite the rambunctious thing I used to be. I got to replace my hip, and I'm not quite the same thing. But
I feel you.
But it's important, right? And in the Love and Light Land, as a fairly well-known psychic with a certain track record, like you, and you and I are very similar in a lot of so many ways, I think. In that we've utilized our sort of street cred as someone who predicts things and does things and sees things, and not made a big deal out of it, and tried to humanize that, and also to try to come from a socially conscious space to try to help other people. I think it's, our job, your job and my job, is to try to help people, is to try to make them feel good about themselves. If I predict something, to me that's, that's not that important. The most important thing is to try to help people find ways in which they can really see the magic within themselves. So when I see the Manosphere and Andrew Tate and all these dudes, I'm over it. And I've not been shy about saying what I thought, and I've not been shy about saying it in person either. Again, I'm maybe not quite as overt in that as a 71-year-old as I might have been at some point in the past, but I'm still like that. And I think as an online, presence, it's important for me to say that. And I think it's important for all of us who, if the United States is ever going to come back to some semblance of balance, we have to get along. If we hung out with people from different races or different backgrounds, we would have a blast, man. We would understand, the color and the, the fabrics and the food and the music. I mean, I don't want a bunch of, white people all the time. They're boring. It's important to have a little, it's to have a little magic, have a little, variety. And I think that the racial, racism is crazy. It's crazy. And
it's
one
crazy.
Last thing.
It is crazy.
One last thing while I'm on a roll. The reason I'm good at predicting the economy and the reason I'm good at predicting a lot of things is because I don't lie to myself. I may misjudge things. I do all the time. I'm not 98% accurate. I hate it for you. I'm not. I do the best I can. But I do not let peer pressure cause me to not say what I think. There's only been one time in my career where I ever second guessed myself. And you know what that is?
What?
In 2016, I said I hate it, but I have to say that Trump is going to be president. And the very first thing I saw on Facebook? You. And the only psychic in the world.
I remember that.
The only psychic in the world that would make me go, I thought, well, if Danielle says it, then maybe I'm tripping. And I didn't say it until later. I thought, I'm never going to do this again. If I think it's going to be, Martians on the White House lawn, then that's how it rolls. I don't think that, but I mean, if I did, I would say it. I don't edit what I think. I mean, I try to be polite, but I don't suppress what I think.
You are kind. You're always kind, and you're kind. You're like me. You're kind until you're not. But if you're not, there's a reason for that, And people are like, you're so nice. You're so kind. I'm like, I'm kind until I'm not. I'm Italian and Scot. So I'm kind until I'm not. But I give somebody, I let them prove their case that they really are rejecting the kindness, and so do you. And, I have to tell you this. So I had the same situation when you were predicting for Trump. And I just saw Hillary. I saw Hillary getting in there. I saw women crying. I saw Hillary crying. I saw this whole thing go down. And it wasn't just the theater of the mind. I watched it happen. She was wearing this, it was a dressy pantsuit she had on. But here's what's weird. At one time, she had a white pantsuit on. It was like an off-white color. Another time, she had a red pantsuit. Another time, it sounds like the flag. She had a blue pantsuit. And every time, I kept seeing her in this different pantsuit. And I'm like, and I thought I was tripping. I'm like, why am I seeing red, white, and blue? What is that about? Well, she won the popular vote. She didn't get, for whatever reason, she did not get the Electoral College. So what's so fascinating about that is you were predicting for Trump, and I did the same thing you did, Andrew. I was like, oh crap, no, not that guy first and foremost, but oh my God, really? God, am I tripping? Am I tripping with this Hillary thing? Because how could I did the exact same thing? Because if there was anybody going to say that Trump was going to win, that I would even go, what? But I'm like, well, this is what I'm looking at. And it's really an interesting thing because you were talking earlier about how we interpret things, right?
For sure.
And because I had a friend of mine in California, and after this all went down and Hillary did not become the president of the United States, my friend was trying to, I think, understand how I saw that. And she was saying, well, are you sure you didn't see this? Or are you sure? I said, no, I am telling you, I saw her get sworn into the presidency. So I don't know what multiverse I was looking at, but and it really just stuck with me because I thought there's got to be a mistake. There's got to be a mistake, and I remember at the end, obviously she did not become president. That's obvious. I remember when the election was happening, I remember they were covering people coming out of the polls. Do you remember this? And the election, the people who were doing the exit polls were asking them, who did you vote for? Who did you vote for? And there were people in Florida, people in Ohio, in these funny little Rust Belt states. And I say funny little meaning, that's a term of endearment if you're a Montanan. All these Rust Belt states where people were coming out and they were saying the weirdest thing happened. I voted for Hillary Clinton and it was a digital voting machine and it kind of flickered. And I swear it looked like it maybe highlighted Trump for a second, but I voted for Hillary. And this happened. And I'm not trying to justify my prediction. I just remember after she did not win the presidency, watching the news, having these things on the actual mainstream news, CBS, NBC, ABC, all these things that were promptly removed offline. They took them down. They had these clips up there and then they just took them down. Because back in 2016, 2017, we really weren't ready to look at the fact that we could have some problems with our election, even though Obama in 2014 said, we've got eyeballs on the Russians. They are gunning down. Now, that's not to take away from the fact that a ton of people voted for Donald Trump in 2016. And obviously, whatever, he won, okay? And people voted for Trump in 2024 also. So there are people who are Trump fans, and I'm not taking any of that away. I'm just saying when you're reading the ethers, I had a friend of mine recently say to me, how can it be that you talk to these angels? And this goes back to the comment of the person who said, well, I read the universe and the universe is always right, so I'm always 100% right.
I talk directly to
I have
spirit.
A comment about that. Yeah. Well, I talk directly to angels and I'm still a person. Okay. So when I looked at, and my friend said to me, I'm not getting on your case, but if you talk to angels and they know what's happening, and you predicted for Kamala, and all of these other psychics predicted for Kamala. Yeah, you did too, Andrew. And, everybody is in the Kamala tank here. So how is it that the angels can be wrong? And what I said to my friend and what I'll say to the entire globe right now is that the angels were not wrong. How I interpreted that comment was incorrect, because in the same way that Hillary Clinton won the election, but she did not get promoted to the presidency, I do believe we're going to find out some interesting things about voting machines, about who is trying to control all of this globally. The United States is not the only country with a very white nationalist agenda that's trying to run it right now. And so I do believe that's going to come to bear. However, I, as the interpreter, thought, well, my God, that's just winning the election. There's no other way around this. So it was not the angels being incorrect about this information. It was my interpretation of the information that needed work. And in this field, we get to keep growing. The universe is always right. Am I going to, and just like you, Andrew, am I going to say I'm always right? Hell no. I don't think I'm Jesus the Christ. No, I'm going to make mistakes in translation and all kinds of things. I've been fortunate, like you, over the years, that a lot of the predictions that I've made have just been on the pin. That doesn't mean they're always going to. And universe gives us an opportunity to continue to grow in this job. Shoot, I've had plenty of public opportunities to grow in this job. So, yeah, that's a lot of fun too. And something I want to just touch on here, Andrew, as we get ready to wrap our podcast up, because you said it earlier on. And just a real quick cap to what I was talking about. When we as psychics are dealing with interpretation, when you're looking at votes, when you're looking at an election, it should be black or white, right? There's a winner and a loser. But what we're seeing is multiple layers of activity that go on in elections. And we are seeing multiple layers of agenda as opposed to just who wants the Republican and who wants the Democrat. It's not a football game, especially now globally. So the reading of that particular situation, boy, I've learned every time I learn something different, I'm like, oh, that's a new layer. Oh, that's what that subtle energy looks like. Okay. And the elections, I think, are probably the toughest things to call in this era, just because of the amount of shenaniganry that is available to people. And that kind of wraps around to all the psychic work that you do, as well as you're a channel, you are a psychic. And I want to get this in here before we're out of time, because you were talking about earlier in the podcast doing an overlay. And I want to explain to people what you're talking about. So guys, Andrew is a phenomenal past life reader. He is, I would call you a past life correlator, actually. And if you follow Andrew on Facebook, you will see that he will put up pictures and then overlay in Photoshop laptop or whatnot, a picture of someone's face, and he will say, person A, who's a modern person, was person B, who is the deceased person, and he'll match up physical features. He will match up the way they actually are. And it's really fascinating. And Andrew, I want to throw this in. You're the first person that I heard talk about living multiple past lives at one time. And it blew my freaking mind because I'm such a quantum physics person. I'm such a Marvel multiverse person. You know, I'm like, oh my God, I have to know more about this. Are there 9 Danielles out there? How am I living these multiple past lives? So if you could, before we're out of time here, can you talk a little about your past life work and how you arrived at this, you know, I could be this person, I could also be that person simultaneously. How did you arrive at that, and tell folks about that type of work?
So I didn't come up with this idea on my own, right? But I ran with it in a unique way. And I think that it goes back to consciousness and what is it that actually reincarnates. So I look at consciousness as being non-local. Like when you and I do, like I don't do them anymore, but you probably still do them, criminal cases and things like that. If we see something that describes some place that we've never seen, that's not in our head. We're connecting with it. So the way I look at consciousness is non-local. It's like Google Cloud. And that, so past life is a series of experiences that was encapsulated in a physical body, and those, to me, those physical experiences are in my account in Google Cloud. Like if you and I shared a Netflix account, we could be, you know, twin souls in different bodies. So I think it's important to look at that there is a spiritual connectedness and interconnectedness. And I do think that what I'm looking at to try to understand past lives is why I started down this trail, because I would see things and it confused me. And I went to, when I was in San Francisco, in 1979 when I was 24 years old. And I had these images in my head, it just confused me a lot. And I went to this guy at this big psychic fair. I'd never been to a psychic fair, and I went to this Cow Palace, which is where what then the San Francisco Warriors used to play basketball. And he said, you know, you're going to do what we do, and you're going to be famous for it. I'm like, dude. And he also said, you know, I was asking about a life in Victoria. He goes, well, you were a woman, and you were kind of a handful. I'm like, dude. And he also said, you know, you've been all these things, and your life's going to be really hard. And I thought, you know, there's got to be a refund policy here somewhere. But
right.
But what happened was that I started to see patterns, and what I'm looking for is basically a pattern, and I'm looking for a style. I don't look at reincarnation as this progression, one after another, like towards spiritual perfection. I look at it more like an art project, that we have a certain style. I'm going to be kind of creative, sort of flamboyant, probably, a little bit of a hot mess every time. And then come back because we're trying to express that essence. I also think people come here because they like it. I think they come to find love and express love. And so for me, in trying to understand causality, I'm good with economics because I see linkages. It's the reason I went from being a psychic on TV to a corporate executive. I never had like a normal job till I was in my 40s, and I was this big time dude in my 50s. It was weird. But it was because I was seeing patterns. Yeah. And just like I would look at your third chakra and it'd light up, the same kind of thing happened in business. I would see things light up and I knew that was a problem. So long-winded way I try to summarize this. I think that people do have a commonality. I think that having multiple lives at the same time is not very common, but I think it's possible. And just like from quantum physics, we see, experiments where there's a proton or whatever, it seems like it's in two places at the same time. I think the same kinds of logic applies here. So for me, past lives is kind of my thing. I think I've gotten a lot of attention for that. And I actually do kind of think that when it comes to past lives, I'm kind of a badass. But it's also, it's subjective. If I make predictions about the economy, it happens or it doesn't. If I say this is going to happen,
right,
you say yes, you got it right, or no, you didn't. But if I say this person was the reincarnation of this person, it's much more complicated. But I think that we have styles and the ways in which we process things. I look at, when I do readings, it's basically about trying to read emotions and trying to understand how people process emotions. So that gives us a heads up into what they're likely to do next. And that's the same thing with past lives. So I do think you can be multiple, not more than like maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe, but that again, it's like you're sharing the same Netflix account, and that information is stored as a repository of that information. And again, there is a spiritual essence, an original Danielle, the core Danielle somewhere, and that Danielle is being expressed. I mean, you're an incredibly magical, creative, all this talent as a musician and all these things, right? So that essence, I think, continues. So again, I hope that kind of summarizes it and makes some sense. So
it does, and I think it is so fascinating, and it's fascinating to me. I do a lot of I'll see people past lives. They come in my readings. These angels will show me people's past lives when it's relevant to an issue they're still struggling with.
For sure.
When something is going on that it's a burr in their saddle, and I'm being shown what's going on.
Sure.
And so as we wrap up here, I would love to let everyone know, Andrew, that everybody, you are familiar with the Rocky Mountain Academy of Energetic Arts, and that's my online academy that actually started in 2016, and we launched out, and I have invited Andrew to be an instructor, and he has accepted this invitation, and I am so excited. So we're going to get him onboarded, and so you can hit us up at rmaea.com, and you can check out the kind of classes that Andrew's going to be putting up, and that's up to Andrew. He's going to decide what kind of 4-week classes he wants to teach, but you can sign up for Andrew's classes there, gang. And also, Andrew has kind of come out of retirement here, as we can see that he's graced our show. I'm so super psyched to have you here. And he is also doing readings, you guys. And he is doing readings. So, Andrew, where can people find you if they want to book a reading with you?
So my website is Andrew-Brewer, ANDREW-BREWER.com. And I'm on Substack, Karmic Outlaw on Substack. And I'm on Facebook. I think that's Andrew.Brewer, I think, on Facebook. So I'm definitely doing readings. I kind of come in and out. I'm kind of weird in that I will sometimes just exit the building and stop for a while. But I'm absolutely back and doing things. This is the first podcast I've done in a while too. So it's fun. It's fun to hang with you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I'll tell you what, you have had fans hitting me up to take a look at this podcast. So that's so freaking cool. And I'm so honored to have you on, Andy. And it's something that I feel very passionate. You're welcome. I feel very passionate about making sure that great people get a spotlight put onto them. We live in a time frame where there's a lot of not so great stuff, as you call it, love and light land out there. There's a lot, and no shade on anybody, yet I really do appreciate the folks who have been around a long time and have taken their licks and have a track record and are not afraid to keep showing up for those who are unable to show up. And you have always been that brilliant human being, Andrew.
Thank you. As
everybody,
you as well,
check
Danielle,
out.
And you as well. And I want to say this. You're my favorite psychic. I've said this in public. I think you are the best psychic, and I think you are an incredibly gracious, fun, polite, amazing person. Not just as a psychic, even as a musician, of course, too. And there's just a lot of cool things. So I'm happy that we get to hang. It's always fun to talk to you in whatever way that is, and I appreciate you. And I have appreciated you. Been like a Danielle Egnew fan for a long time, so thank you. From the heart. I mean that.
Well, you're very welcome. I can feel that. Thank you. That means a lot. It really means a lot, and I appreciate you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Well, you guys, check him out on the website. Check him out on Facebook, guys. You got to check out Andrew Brewer. Check him out at Rocky Mountain Academy of Energetic Arts. Everybody, thank you for hanging in there with us on this podcast, and I will see you all next podcast.